And welcome once again to your brand new Tuesday night tradition on YouTube or any day of the week, depending on what podcast provider you from, as the red smoke rises on another edition of Red Smoke Rising. I am one of your hosts, Tom Franklin, also known as Soccer Zombie, joined by my friends Jeremy Clements and Jake Henry. Jeremy, how you doing, bud?
Doing well, Tom. Ready to talk city. We've got a jam-packed show, a lot to get into, so I'm ready to do it, my friend. How are you?
Doing good. Working off that Thanksgiving turkey still. Of course, this is always the time of year where everyone seems to add on a couple of pounds, and that's just kind of the way it goes around this time of year. Jake, did you have a good Thanksgiving?
I did. Grandma Henry made some good broccoli, cheddar, and rice. So that was
Okay.
That was a good dish to have.
That sounds like a really good pregame meal. Broccoli, cheddar, and rice. Get that carb load in you.
Needed for the show next time.
Absolutely. So, just to let you guys know, we first of all, we want to thank you for joining us last month when we had our kind of soft launch, and we took some of your advice to heart. And so, what we're going to do going forward is for this part of the show, we're going to go about 45 to 60 minutes for the podcast portion of the show, which of course is available on all podcast platforms, and then we're going to do. And this is a little bit derivative of flyover footy, but, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And we are going to do kind of a YouTube-only extra time. So we see you all in the chat already going right now. Aaron, Ed, Aaron Hansen, JT Kirsting, Kayla. I see you, Eli Carlson. I see you all in there now staying active on the chat. We're going to try to keep on top of chat as much as we can during the show, but we're going to take some time after the show on YouTube to talk to you guys and just kind of have a little bit of a lower your shoulders, just friendly chit chat. And one of the things that we're going to talk about in that post game chat is if there is one Thanksgiving food item that you absolutely positively must have, that if you were going to take it on a desert island, what is that food item? Don't say it now. Hold on to it. We're going to talk about that in the extra time chat at the end. Also, a little bit more housekeeping news here today. Red Smoke Rising is available on YouTube at STL Soccer News YouTube channel. So please like and subscribe on that channel, on that account. This is being simulcast on the Soccer Zombie YouTube, but it won't be for much longer. As we get toward the start of the season, eventually this will disappear on the Soccer Zombie YouTube and will be only on STL Soccer News. And of course, if you're watching on X as well, we'll still be on there at the STL Soccer News account there as well. Today's episode, as Jeremy alluded to, we got a lot to cover here because it's been a month since we've been here. Off-season does that to you. Is St. Louis City going to hire a head coach before we all shed our mortal coils? We'll talk about that. And also, news on the MLS schedule. You may have heard it's shifting a little bit. Everyone's talking about it. We'll talk about it too. Everyone's also talking and griping about the 2026 St. Louis City schedule. So we'll get to all of that coming up on this. Plus, Jake Henry is going to have a end-of-year recap on St. Louis City Academy as we strive to keep you abreast on what's going on with City 2 as well as the Academy. And speaking of housekeeping items, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Pat Connolly Tavern, located at the corner of Oakland and Tam in beautiful Dogtown of St. Louis Institution since 1942. That fried chicken there is also a institution as well. There's live music multiple nights a week. It's also a St. Louis City on tap bar. Recently had a live Soccer Zombie watch along. That's what you're seeing right here. It was a great turnout. We're going to have more of that coming up in 2026 and beyond. So please support our friends at Pat Connolly Tavern, located at the corner of Oakland and Tam in beautiful Dogtown. And of course, if you're going to the zoo, if you're going to Forest Park, it's very easy to just swing right across the Tam Bridge and check them out. All right, on to our first segment of the day, and we are talking about the St. Louis City roster. So we do have a few updates on the St. Louis City roster here, starting out. New contracts being given out to Josh Yarrow as well as Ben Lunt. And of course, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time because I think enough's been said on the controversial one of those two. We all know it's Ben Lunt, guys, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Jeremy, I think you're muted.
Technology's my friend. Tom, you're right. Everyone's mad about the backup keeper. That's what's making the headlines in St. Louis these days.
You know, I feel like it's my job to have the technological issues on a live broadcast. If anyone has watched any of my St. Louis City watch-alongs, but you'll be forgiven on that. Yes, Josh Yarrow's back for another year. Look, Josh Yarrow, nice guy, great community guy, but also just why? Just why? I really don't have anything more to say than that, but he's here. Ben Lunt, I thought he deserved his contract. I thought he proved himself in the time that he was given in Roman Berkey's absence, which I think was good for him. I think because he was kind of an unknown quantity before he was able to get some playing time this year, earns a new contract. And also, I think, guys, I think that's part of it because I think Roman Berkey and Ben Lunt have a good partnership. And you typically want that in a, like in NHL, for instance, you typically want a good partnership with your goalies. I think it's also the fact in soccer as well, right, guys? So moving on, Joey Zielinski, Jaden Reed, and Seth Antwi had their options declined, and nothing too surprising there. I did find it very interesting that those three options, the press release made it seem like it was structured in a way to make it sound like a Corey Ray decision, which I think gives us a little bit of clarity on the power structure, maybe, or maybe it doesn't. I still feel that the Diego, Hackworth, and Ray power structure is still a little bit opaque, but the release, Jeremy, made it seem to me like these were all Corey Ray decisions.
Well, you'd like to think so, just as much as you think that Hackworth played a role in getting the Yarrow deal done. The one thing to call out quickly about this graphic is that it does assume off-roster designations for Tyson Pierce and Miguel Perez, two of the homegrowns that are on the city roster technically. They're not reflected here. That's why last year Pierce was an off-roster loan to City 2, and then Perez had the slot 31 designation, was also at City 2 for the season. So I didn't move those back. So 4 senior spots, 5 supplemental technically to fill. A lot of work, and you would hope Corey Ray is starting to have a say in this roster build.
Yeah, totally. And Jake, I mean, with those three being let go, Jaden Reed, Seth Antwi, Joey Zielinski, any surprises there?
I think Reed was a little bit of a surprise because of his age and how much potential he did have before that injury. But other than that, I really don't think there's much other surprises.
No, I don't think so either. I was sort of surprised with Zielinski only because I don't think he really excelled when he got playing time, but the fact he didn't get much playing time at all maybe was a little bit telling as to what the organization thought of him. But I had heard that when he went to Indy 11, he performed very well for them as their right back. But I guess then and of course, now our fullback situation is kind of dire right now, as you can look, because you can see with the roster profile, we don't really have many fullbacks outside of Thomas Totland. And that is really it. So, if you were talking about someone to, be depth, maybe you're thinking, okay, Joey Zielinski, he can at least be our backup right back. But I wonder, Jake, if this opens up an opportunity for Tyson Pierce. What do you think about Tyson Pierce's prospects on the roster next year?
I think he's still got a year or two at least. He's young and promising, but we also have to remember he wasn't technically a left back or left wing back or whatever to start off his career. He actually started as a defensive midfielder, I believe.
Yep.
So I think he's starting to get, or he's more than starting. He's well into the development of staying in that role, but I think it still needs more time.
Well, and keep in mind he's only 18 as well.
Right.
So I mean, he's definitely, there's no reason to rush him if you don't have to. I thought he did take a step forward in City 2 this year, just based on what I saw from him. And as you mentioned, he's got that versatility as well. Although you could also say that Yaziel Orozco also has, basically plays that role right now, because Orozco can play the fullbacks as well as a six, which I think is fair to say, guys. We want a six on our wish list for next year. We'll talk in a couple weeks when we come back. We're going to have a holiday wish list. We're going to make all of our holiday wish lists, and hopefully some of them even come true. But I think it's fair to say all six will be on all three of our wish lists, right?
Oh, 100%, Tom. I think it's telling, though. Orozco is the only one that you could really classify as a left back on the roster right now, unless you want to throw Pierce into the conversation. But it's worth mentioning, too, negotiations are ongoing, reportedly, according to the team, with Conrad Vollum. So, rumored to have a really expensive purchase clause in his contract in that transfer deal. So it will be telling to see if that gets done. But you figure that has to be one of the priorities as well for Corey Ray, because it continues to be a trouble spot for City.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, again, right now our fullback depth is basically, puddle thin. They're also still hoping to maybe bring back Devin Padelford. That was mentioned in that release as well. Padelford, I would almost, so it's interesting because Henry Kessler they're still negotiating with, which I find it very interesting that Henry Kessler's back in St. Louis. And he took a picture today at the training ground, which is snow covered. And if you look at those three guys, if you could only have one of those three, who is your one of those three? I have my pick, but we'll start with Jeremy. What is the one out of the three you want back?
I'm going Henry Kessler, period. To me, it's not a debate. I don't know that left back is Vollum's best position anyway. I don't know if he fits there, and certainly I don't put him at left mid, because that's where we would hope to see Mekhi Joyner take steps forward. So, in short, for me, Henry Kessler, hands down.
Well, and that is Jerry Hayes' pick as well. I see you there in the chat. Henry is always in her heart. Jake, what would your choice be of those three? Kessler, Vollum, or Padelford?
Kessler, easily.
You say Kessler.
But I still, I know I said easily, but I almost give it 1A, 1B with Padelford, just because of that depth issue we have. And Padelford was more than capable of being that role for us. So my brain says Kessler, but I actually want to say Padelford.
I think you bring up an interesting point in that I think of the three players, you could argue that Kessler's the best player of the three, which sounds damning of Conrad Vollum, who's a very good player in his own right. But Jeremy, me and you have had this debate on him many times. What is his position? Like, what is his best position? Now, granted, that one reason that we're still kind of, curious about what his ultimate spot is because he was moved around a lot. And when you go through a regime change where you're going from a 3 in the back to, a more standard, 4-2-3-1, you basically have to adapt as you go along. But I'm also not going to say Conrad Vollum, only because I think Vollum's he's not going to cost what his buyout's going to be, but I think he's going to cost a lot of money for whoever brings him in. And I also am not comfortable with saying Conrad Vollum because we don't know who our coach is, and we don't know what system that coach is going to have, whether it's going to be a 3 in the back again, or if it's going to be what Critchley had with the more standard 4-2-3-1 with a mid to high press. Either way, you just don't know where Conrad Vollum fits in. Henry Kessler, great player when he's healthy. That's kind of the caveat with him, though, when healthy. So my pick of the three, honestly, I would rather have Padelford back of those three, only because I think Padelford's going to cost a little less than the other two. Also, he is a left back, a true left back. Of those options, he's the only true, honest to goodness left back, which is our need right now because, as you said, Jeremy, Orozco's our only player right now on the roster that has experience playing left back, and he's not even left-footed, Jeremy.
No, you're right. And talking to a source that he mentioned to me that Padelford, Minnesota had multiple offers for Padelford prior to the loan deal with us. So rumored to see Vancouver and Austin in the mix for him. So we don't know what his purchase price will be either. But your point is well taken, Tom. I think for me, the reason I still lean Kessler is. I really think with Falou Fall being as aggressive as he is, and we saw it in the final couple games of the season, Kessler in that sweeper role behind him added stability to that back line, and that's why I like Kessler. I don't know if Baumgartel can play that role. We know Hebert and him didn't work well in the final game of the season, so as much as I want a left back, we've had problems there in the filling that long term, so I still want stability in the center of the park on the back line.
And as JT points out in the chat, Padelford's also a long throw specialist. We don't have anyone else on the roster that is that specialist, and it bore fruit in the final game too. So we'll see what happens. Maybe we get all three back. That'd be nice. Someone who I fear might not be back, Celio Pompeu. And I only say this because he had a very cryptic Insta post that it was a lot of players at the end of the year, they'll post a sizzle reel kind of their, looking back, on their, 2025. I know Henry Kessler posted one to the tune of Cranberries Linger, which Jerry was, kind of worried about, as I think a lot of fans were. But Celio went on Instagram and, with the video, he said, quote, "Grateful for this chapter, but still writing the story. The best is yet to come," end quote. Jake, am I reading too much into this? Or should we be worried that maybe Celio's moving on?
I don't see it. It would really take a transfer, and we aren't going to get enough value out of him to make it even worth a move. But I just don't see him leaving.
Yeah. It would be very hard for a lot of fans, I think, to move on from Celio just because he is, such a good personality. He is, someone that is a very flashy player, but at the same time, I do have to question what his role is on the roster going forward, especially because, when you're talking about holiday wish lists, one of the things that I've seen a lot of people clamor for is a DP left winger. That's Celio. You're not asking for a DP left winger if Celio's the answer. And I think we've seen at times this year, Celio, his consistency is not there. We've seen him get his dauber down, this year quite a bit. His body language has looked a little bit off. He's someone that he's been with this organization now for 4 years. And, maybe there's a feeling with Celio that he's accomplished all that he can here in St. Louis. Maybe it's time for him to try something new after 4 years. Of course, Jeremy, tell me I'm just reading him too much into this and that he's going to come back and I'm going to look silly.
I wish I could, to be honest with you. I would say that I think there has been speculation and, some folks that have said in the past that Celio has asked for a transfer in the past, or at least sought his way out to find playing time. So I am not convinced that you're reading too much into it, Tom. You've spoke to all the points that I would make, and I think I'm in the same camp as you.
Yeah, and I'm seeing some comments in the chat here from Matt. Could see us getting close to $1 million for Celio. I could see people viewing it the either way. That's Ben Gottlieb in the chat. I personally think the chapter he's referring to is this season. But then usually when you're making chapter references, you're talking about new chapters, and that usually means like a new stop in your career. If you read the Lutz Pfannenstiel autobiography, I think he literally breaks down his career into chapters, which Aberdeen shirt, by the way, that's my Lutz reference for this episode. But I think whether Celio comes back or not might depend on the next coach for St. Louis, and that leads us to our discussion on this head coaching search. And we learned from Tom Bogert, the venerable Tom Bogert, the reliable Tom Bogert on The Athletic, that St. Louis City is in the final stages of the coaching search. Sources briefed the situation to The Athletic. St. Louis and this is all Bogart's words here. Bogart says St. Louis will go with a candidate that has experience in MLS. Finalists continue to interview. A decision is expected in the near future. And Jeremy, you got this graphic from Diego up here, and yeah, so this kind of it feels like if it's not winding down, Jeremy, it should be.
Yeah, no, 100%. And Diego saying, "quote We have a timeline, and as much as the sooner we get the head coach with us, the better we can be planning for the player movements in January." But to give you a reference point, last year we announced our head coach in early December, and that gave us enough time to evolve him in the right decisions to be ready to go for the beginning of the January when preseason starts. End quote. That quote coming from an appearance on KMOX by the St. Louis City president and GM. So we're right on cue with that timeline based on what Tom Bogart is saying. I think the piece to me, Tom, and Jake, please jump into this as well, that was noteworthy is the MLS experience, because in previous interviews and appearances, Diego has kind of said, well, we might go with a international coach and someone in the sporting world that had MLS experience. So I think some folks may have been thinking, hey, we just hired Corey Ray, who is an MLS veteran. Now that opens the door for a more international coaching candidate to step in. But now they're saying it's going to be MLS and MLS, which, I mean, I don't have a problem with that. It's just that to me is the newsworthy piece of that, even without mentioning names.
Yep, and I see Felix in the chat there noting that Critchley technically has that MLS experience as well. And we were talking, Jake, before the show that if it is Critchley that is named as the next head coach, then that could have a bit of a domino effect when it comes to City 2, because obviously Critchley won't be there to coach. So you had someone in mind for that.
Yeah, I really think if Critchley moves up and stays up, that Mike Sorber will be the guy, current U16s coach. I think it makes a lot of sense. He was a former technical director, MLS assistant coach. Just he follows a similar pathway as like John Hackworth, and we saw his success in with City 2 this season and getting those players going. So I think it could make a really, really good hire at that level.
Well, I mean, and if MLS Next Pro is supposed to be a development ground, it's not just a development ground for players, it's a development ground for coaches as well. And one of the coaches that has Next Pro experience, very recent Next Pro experience, that has been, speculated, because again, we have no concrete candidates for this head coaching job. Like the sporting director search, we learned that we knew about Lee Dykes, we knew about Corey Ray, we knew that Hackworth was in the running as well. We knew we ended up learning about this guy from Bahia, that Diego was looking at as well. We don't have any concrete names here, so I bring these three up that you can see on the YouTube. I put them in the thumbnail. That's partly why. But and yes, Caleb Porter was engagement bait. I'll admit that. I don't think anyone's like seriously talking about Caleb Porter. At least I hope not. But the guy that has Next Pro experience, as well as experience with Corey Ray, is Laurent Courtois, who just left CF Montreal with Corey Ray, but they also worked together with Columbus Crew too. And so Jeremy, you actually, not just this graphic here as well, but you also kind of put together a graphic of other coaches that also have this MLS experience that would, in theory, qualify, for this role here. So at this point, we're just speculating. We're just speculating as to who it could be. I personally like Courtois. I like the fact that he does have this experience with Corey Ray. If you're talking about the power structure, having Corey Ray, having an ally as his head coach might firm his position. And this would be a big thumbs up to folks that are hoping Corey does have more of a say in this club. But Jeremy, you put up some other names here: Giovanni Savarese, Troy Lessen, Vanni Sartini, Josh Wolf. Where do you think we go at this point, or can you even reasonably guess where we go?
I think any guess, as much as I love to speculate, is just that. I think the thing that jumps out at me looking at all of these candidates is, I hate to say it, but the inexperience of David Critchley in a way, because he's, got 19 games under his belt. Every other person that was kind of tossed out in these graphics and in these discussions has way more than that. I kind of lean toward like Gio Savarese. I loved what he did in Portland. He's been out of a job for a few years, but had success. Granted, his more prominent success maybe came in the NASL with the Cosmos, but I like Savarese. I think what surprised me, I didn't know much about Troy Lesens, so that name surprised me. I will go on record, and I was on socials yesterday talking to some folks. As much as Caleb Porter had success, because you can see he won in Portland, he won in Columbus before having a rather unceremonial tenure in New England. The rumors and things that have come out about the toxicity in that organization while he was a part of it really would make me hope that we avoid bringing him to St. Louis. So that's the name that I would really love to avoid. Outside of that, I'm hard pressed to make a strong case for Critchley. He did make the locker room better. He fixed that, but how important is tenured success in this role?
That's a good point too, and I also this leads to another conversation on David Critchley. So I think when we were hiring the sporting director, I mean Hackworth was mentioned as a candidate, and there was a lot of vitriol in the city fan base about Hackworth being the guy. He had some supporters, but there was also a lot of like, well, it's more the same. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss, but also just because Hackworth is someone that would radically be different than Lutz, I think, because Hackworth is more domestic based. Lutz is more European, worldwide based in terms of where he targets his talents. So we won't know what a John Hackworth sporting director role will look like because Hackworth was not the guy. But when people talk about David Critchley as the next St. Louis City head coach, you don't get a lot of ire about that. You get maybe almost kind of like a tenuous, okay, that's fine. It's so funny. After the FC Dallas game where we had 40 shots and only one went in, if you had asked me then, are you Critch in or Critch out? I would have been Critch, hell no. Because as nice as you allude to, Jeremy, he did improve the locker room. The players do seem to like playing for him, but how do you forgive tactics that result in 40 shots and no goals? But then after that game, the team really turned around on the field. Tangible results on the field, which is I think all we've been kind of wanting, for the longest time. And if you're looking at where this roster is going to go and where this club is going to go over the next couple of years, we're not going to be competing for the MLS Cup next year. I doubt we're going to be competing for it into 2027 unless we really reload, very well under Corey Ray, which could happen. It's not unheard of in MLS to go from wooden spoon to MLS Cup contenders. I mean, look at FC Cincinnati, just as an example. But would you rather have someone that you can, develop, as a head coach, as your roster is developing? Or do you just want to go with that experience right away and start building right away, given that the cycle in MLS, typically is very quickly? So Jake, let me ask you, Critchley, St. Louis City head coach 2026, yay or nay?
Yay. I like him. I think he's done well enough. But that inexperience is a factor, and I just think we got to give him a shot to get that experience. Because if you don't have experience, how are you going to get it then if you're not getting the shot at City?
That's true. I mean, how do you get experience if you don't get experience? That's the age-old question for anyone that is trying to get into the job market here. But as far as like what I would prefer, I mean, I like the idea of Laurent Courtois, but he would be a three in the back coach. Do we have the roster for that? Especially if we're talking about being shorthanded on defense, with Kessler still unsigned. Again, all we can do is sit here and speculate. So really, let's move on. Hopefully by the next episode, we have a head coach that we can actually talk about something tangible. But really, all we can do is just kind of speculate. Real quick note: MLS Cup will be between Inter Messi and Vancouver. Now, I only point this out just because it is the MLS Cup, and the fun fact. Tom Timmerman pointed out on Blue Sky that if Vancouver had beaten St. Louis at Energizer Park on April 19th, Vancouver would have hosted the final. Instead, they drew City 0-0, and they'll now have to make a 4,500-kilometer trek to South Florida that the European mind cannot just comprehend. And of course, Inter Miami's result against City would not have mattered because St. Louis City didn't play Inter Miami this season, and they won't play them next season. And we'll talk about that 2026 schedule a little bit later on, and a little bit more about how little regard MLS has for St. Louis City now that we're no longer the shiny new plaything like we were before Messi was signed. But we got to talk about some other schedule news here first, because this affects the league as a whole. The MLS is changing its calendar. You may have heard about it. Everyone's talking about it. So the new format works like this. The season will kick off in mid-July, and it'll run until mid-December. Now, this isn't going to be like a Clausura Apertura thing like Liga MX. It's going to be one continuous season, but they're going to take a break from mid-December until about mid-February, probably right after the Super Bowl. And the second half of the season will run from mid-February to April, with MLS Cup playoffs happening in May. So, before we get into deeper in this discussion, guys, I personally don't think this schedule change is that big of a deal. I think it's better to align with the international windows, especially as MLS grows as a league and becomes more worldwide relevant, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I think that the winter break from mid-December to mid-February is very sensible. The only caveat I would say, though, is we all know what the weather's like outside right now. Would you guys go to an game at Energizer Park this past weekend when it's in the 30s and there's still snow on the ground? Jeremy, I'll ask you first. Would you go to a cold weather game in December at City Park? And what do you think overall of the schedule switch?
Well, I've sat out in the snow at Notre Dame Stadium. I've went to the Sub-Zero game in Kansas City when the Chiefs played the Dolphins in the playoffs. I have a heated vest. My butt will be in the stands in the north end at that. I don't care. Rain, sleet, snow, tornadoes, I'm in the north end. Now, I don't speak for everybody, but I like the schedule change. I think, yes, there are going to be challenges, obviously. Nothing was ever going to be perfect. I think that's important to say in this situation. But you have to, in my mind, if you're going to grow this league and ever get it to the point where you are even trying to be mentioned in the same breath as, a Premier League, a La Liga, a Bundesliga, you have to align to the global markets to grow this league. So this is the first step, and it needed to happen. My biggest gripe with it is they didn't do it in time for the World Cup season.
Yes. Bingo, because that would have been the perfect time to do it. Although I think the way that they're doing it, Jake, is actually okay, because they are going to have that kind of shotgun 14-game season in 2027, which they would have had to do in either 2026 or 2027 anyway. So it's kind of like, what's the point? But Jake, what are your thoughts on this calendar shift? Do you think it's as big of a deal as people are making it out to be?
No, I really don't. I love winter personally. I would 100% be out there, and I will 100% be out there. But I think it's good, like you said, for the transfer market and bringing in the players and sending them out as well, because they can just go right into their season, or just have that perfect alignment with Europe. But I'm really excited to see it finally happening where we have this shift. So I just can't wait, honestly.
Yeah, I can't wait for it either. And I'm one of those guys that I will definitely go to those cold weather games. But that's just me. I get it if you have kids, young kids don't. I remember my real close buddy from high school. We went to the Bayer Leverkusen game and he brought his 3-year-old daughter with him, and she lasted until halftime, and then she was out. So I do get that aspect of it. But then again, guys, they are going to try to work the schedule around cold weather cities. So I doubt it. Well, I don't want to say I doubt because it's MLS, but in theory, St. Louis and cities further north than St. Louis wouldn't have so many games in November and December. Now, whether that actually happens or not, we'll see. But another thing that is coming with this calendar change, they are also going to change up how they do the conferences. And actually, it's not even going to be conferences anymore. It is going to be divisions. And so we are going to have 5 divisions. And there's been a lot of talk about what these divisions are going to look like, which teams are going to get the short end of the stick, because there are some teams that are not going to get their way. And there's been a lot of options about how we could break these divisions up here. This one that we have right up here is my choice, personally. And Jeremy, I think it's your choice as well. It puts St. Louis with Sporting Kansas, Minnesota, Chicago Fire, and the Ohio's, Columbus Crew and FC Cincinnati, which makes for a fantastic road trip division, especially if we're going to be playing, home and aways every single year against these guys. This is what we've been wanting for years, and we're not going to get it in 2026, unfortunately, except for Minnesota and Kansas, unfortunately. But this also there's 2 groups here that probably get the short end of the stick here. Number 1, DC United. They would get thrown into the Southeast with Nashville, Charlotte, Atlanta, Miami, and Orlando City. And it's really just a matter of numbers as well as geography. I think most DC United fans would rather be in the Northeast with the New Yorks, New England, Montreal, as well as Toronto and Philadelphia. But there's no way to make that work unless you were to do something like move DC to the Northeast, move Toronto to the Central, and move St. Louis to the Southeast, which I don't think. I think you're just infuriating a lot of a lot of fans there in that case. But it also does split the Southwest into the 3 SoCal teams and the 3 Texas teams. And to me, Jeremy, this is the option that I think ruffles the least amount of feathers, and it keeps the teams that want to be together.
I agree 100%. This is, again, as you said, my preferred option. I love the idea of having that rivalry with Chicago. I've pined for that just because we have it in hockey. We have it in baseball. I love when the Fire come to town, and I would love to go see a game in Chicago when they get their new stadium built. So it gives me an excuse to do that. I do feel for the kind of the historic rivalries of, the Galaxy and San Jose, or the DC and, say, Philly, or those other teams. However, I'm going to make a counter argument to the folks that say those are devalued. Now they go down to once a year. Do they mean more?
That's true. That is true. That's a question. That is a very valid question. And also with San Jose, they're the northernmost California team. So and they also, I believe they have a little bit of a rivalry with Real Salt Lake, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it's like a big rivalry, but it is a rivalry. So, if I'm San Jose, I'm not too upset with this. It does suck being away from the LA teams, but you'll still play them. It just won't be, the home and home like usual. But Jake, you had a different map. You had a different option for what you wanted the divisions to break out to be. And again, it all goes back to that Southwestern question. Jake, you are suggesting that the Southwest be the Texas teams, Colorado, Real Salt Lake, and San Diego. And then San Jose gets lumped in with the LAs and then with the Pacific Northwest teams. Tell me why you like this map so much.
Yeah, I honestly thought I had your guys's, but yeah, this map works too, I guess. It's just a matter of those rivalries again, but I think I'd have to agree more with your guys's.
Okay, so I know we talked about the different options before, and yeah, now that I think of it, you were a little, back and forth on it. But I will say, I do see this map as a very realistic option, only because there's going to be, I feel, a bit of a power struggle between San Diego and San Jose. San Jose's they're the originals. They've been around a long time. San Diego is the new kids on the block. So does Daddy eat first? Does San Jose get what they want, and they get to have the LA teams and the Pacific Northwest, or does San Diego get what they want, and then San Jose goes up north? Now, again, this could all be decided already, and we just don't know it yet. I don't know if that would be very standard for MLS to be that forward thinking, in that regard, but they might. But regardless, these two maps, I think they both make sense. I think there's arguments to be had for both. I just like the idea of the SoCal teams and the Texas teams staying together, and I think that would. I don't think any of those teams would have an issue, because it keeps those triangle rivalries together, even though they have to fly out back and forth a couple times. I personally don't think they'll have a problem with it. But there is another map that is floating out there that I think a lot of people will have a problem with, and it was a map that was being touted by one Andrew Wiebe on Twitter. And there it is right here. So, St. Louis in this map would still be with Sporting Kansas and Minnesota, but then we would be paired up with Seattle Sounders, Vancouver Whitecaps, and Portland Timbers for some absolutely anti-wonderful road trip possibilities. But the argument would be that the LA teams stay together, all the California teams stay together, and they would be linked up with Real Salt Lake and Colorado. And then the Texas teams would go to the Southeast with Atlanta, as well as Orlando City and Inter Miami. And the new quote-unquote Central would be Nashville, SC Cincy, Columbus, Chicago Fire, Toronto FC, and the very central CF Montreal. Slight sarcasm. So you got 3 different time zones represented there, so that's a mess. But it does put DC in the Northeast. It brings Charlotte with them for some reason, which I don't think Charlotte would prefer. Guys, even someone in the chat, give me one reason why this map makes sense to anyone. And I'm going to give the floor to you guys. Whoever wants to jump in first, Jake, Jeremy. This map makes sense of this map.
It keeps long-standing rivalries together, Tom. That's the only thing I could say. You get San Diego gets to have their twice-a-year rivalries with all the California teams. You keep Cascadia intact. You keep the St. Louis, Kansas City rivalry intact. All the Northeast rivalries are pretty much intact. You keep the Canadian ones intact with Toronto and Montreal. You still get Hell is Real twice a year. That's the only thing I could say. Is that it's a way to do that. But I personally hate it because I hate West Coast games as it is.
Yep.
When there are those 9:30 starts, even if it's a Saturday night, they're not fun.
No.
So no, this is my least favorite option that I've seen.
I think no matter how you slice it, the Texas teams are going to have to deal with some time zone issues. I've not seen a map where, like, for instance, I've not seen a map where the Texas teams get lumped in with St. Louis, SKC, and Minnesota. And I don't know how that could possibly be done with just the way that everything is laid out. But yeah, Jake, does this map make any sense to you, or do you hate it as much as we do?
I hate it. I mean, I'll keep it simple. Wiebe, what is wrong with you, man?
A lot. I am convinced that this map is just engagement bait, honestly. Mm-hmm. But regardless, That is yet to be determined. It may be determined already. We won't know exactly, when these divisions will be announced. But getting back, to the reason why these division shifts are happening. So we talked about how it's being aligned with the European season, with the transfer window, uninterrupted playoffs, which I saw Aaron Hansen earlier make a comment as well. The 2-week break that we had for the MLS Cup playoffs this year was just ridiculous. It really stunted the momentum the playoffs had, and I like the playoffs being, if we're going to have playoffs, I like them untarnished as they are. It also helps with better timing for cup competitions. Like the format for the CONCACAF Champions Cup really hurts MLS teams as it stands right now. Jeremy, you and I were talking about that before as well. But more importantly, though, what do officials and what do the players for St. Louis City think of this? And I think it's pretty obvious that they are in favor of all of this here. So first things first, we know Roman Berkey and Marcel Hartl, they spent a lot of time in Germany, so they've had to adjust to this MLS schedule playing from spring to fall. But then also Diego Gigliani, former Man City Group guy, he had some things to say about this as well. And then but first, let's talk about Roman Berkey, because this affects him the most, because he is a player on the field, and he had some good points about how this will help players, Jeremy.
Yeah, Berkey at the end of season press conference and unsurprisingly asked about it early on, saying, quote, "I think it's a huge thing for young players, for players that have ambition to go to Europe maybe, and also to sign new players into the league. You don't take a player in the middle of the season out of a club. Maybe clubs are more open to send a player to the U.S. at the end of the season because nobody wants to lose a player in the middle of a season." So, end quote. That was the City captain and new designated player, Roman Berkey, talking about the alignment of the windows as we kind of did earlier. So he clearly thinks it's a positive step, Tom and Jake.
Oh, definitely as well. And I think, one of the things that players have to adjust to in America, Jake, is just the fact that our temperatures swing so wild. And, a lot of players, they don't do that well, playing in the dead of summer, too. So I guess it's really not surprising, Jake, that a lot of these European players are speaking out in favor of it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And you've also got to look at the climate of Europe, too.
Yeah. It's not as extreme, as it is here in America. That is for sure. Marcel Hartl thinks it's a big thing for the whole league.
He does, saying, quote, "I think it's a big thing. It's a very good point in the right direction to get competitive to the top 5 leagues in the world. Also for signing players, now a bit easier to get in the summer instead of our long winter break. And we can sign much more players out of contract instead of trying to get them during their half season. I think it's a very positive thing for the league." And quote, again, Hartl speaking just as Berkey did at the end of season press conference a few weeks back.
Yeah, definitely. So it'll be interesting to see how this transpires with the new schedule change and how it actually does play out in person, how it affects the cups, not just the Champions Cup, also the Open Cup as well. That timing is affected here as well. Now we got to talk about how this affects St. Louis City in 2026. And we got a new schedule for this coming season. And so first game of the year is going to be a familiar first game of the year foe in Charlotte FC. It's the first home game of the year, and we will be actually MLS game number 1, as I believe Matt Baker pointed out on Flyover recently. 1:30 kickoff on February 21st. That's the first MLS game, period. So I thought that was very interesting. And then the first road trip is to San Diego FC on March 1st, which, if that sounds familiar to you as well, that's the exact date of St. Louis's match at San Diego FC this past season. And I'm not going to do a vlog of that one, by the way, but I will say for my Soccer Zombie channel going forward, I do plan on doing some city road games this year and vlogging those just in a different format, but I digress. Back to the schedule. Yeah, so it's a schedule that, as you can see, it's going to go all the way up into the middle of May, and then it's going to take a big break because, as you may have heard, there's a thing called the World Cup that is coming to America, and we are going to have to take a little bit of a break for that while that goes on. And then it resumes in July. July 16th is when we will return, when everyone returns. And Jeremy, as you got some highlights pulled up here, this July 16th game is against a very familiar foe, and there's a very interesting reason why we're getting these guys at this time of year.
It is. It's the MLS trying to capitalize on the World Cup. The first game out of the World Cup break is a game in St. Louis against Sporting Kansas City. I outwardly questioned that openly on social media, and I'll credit Tom Timmerman from the Post-Dispatch as kind of setting me straight, saying, hey, this is the MLS's way of trying to, because we're not the only ones. There's several rivalry games either late that week or into the weekend, even though I think the World Cup final is that weekend after that too, that are all poised to come on the heels of the World Cup, as we have the third place in the obviously the World Cup final that weekend in mid-July as well. So that's why. But I mean, it's one of several highlights, Tom. I think we've got 3 games on Sunday Night Soccer, 3 nationally broadcasted games. There are 6 games on a Wednesday, including our away day to Kansas on August 19th. We've got 4 Sunday games, 3 matches that start at 1:30, including the home opener against Charlotte. The Thursday game coming out of the World Cup break, that's the only Thursday game on the calendar as well. And Jake, are there any big games, anything that I've missed that you are excited about for this season?
I actually want to take a little bit different route on this.
Okay.
I do find it interesting, I guess, that we start off with a road game to San Diego, and then our last home game is against San Diego. So it's kind of like an interesting, just something I kind of noticed about the schedule that doesn't really matter to anything, but it's just something like just a funny coincidence.
A SoCal bookend, if you will.
Yeah.
It is, and it's a lot of firsts too. I think that's really the theme of the highlights graphic here is, New England comes to town for the first time. We're going to New York for the first time, both playing at Citi Field with NYCFC, and also to Red Bull Arena to play Red Bull. And then of course we go to DC this year too. So and it's so a number of firsts, but again those midweek games against Kansas, that's probably my only gripe. I can understand why, but maybe it means the MLS values our rivalry just as on equal footing as some of the others, to put us there coming out of the World Cup break. So maybe maybe I've interpreted it wrong in my gripe, but I still wish it was a weekend game.
Well, I'm looking forward to the New York trips. This is our first away games in New York, period, as a franchise. And of course, we're getting our first ever regular season game with Red Bull New York, which is the final team on our checklist that we've had to check off up until this point. That one I really want to go to that one. That one's very interesting to me. But, kind of talking about the timing of like the Kansas games, for instance, these are both midweek games. Of all the teams that are within reasonable driving distance of St. Louis, that you could plausibly make a road trip to me, there's only 2 that jump out to mind that are on the schedule this year, and that's Kansas and that's Minnesota. And we get Minnesota again in Minnesota in October, which is, but beyond that, we don't get Chicago. We don't get Cincinnati. We don't get Columbus. We don't get Nashville. And so that's my biggest gripe with this schedule is the fact that it really, if you just look at how it was laid out, and of course we don't get Inter Miami, because we got Inter Miami the game before Messi debuted in the Open Cup, literally the week before he debuted, and we've only had the one away game since. We haven't had our Inter Miami home game with Messi yet, which, again, I'm not someone that you guys know my stance on Messi at this point. If you've seen me riff on him on my vlogs or on social media, I think it's a little tiresome how much MLS pushes him out. I mean, but he is the GOAT. He is the greatest of all time, and I think it would be a fun attraction if he did come to St. Louis. I am curious how St. Louis would handle that, but that's a topic for another show. My problem is that the schedule is laid out in a way that just does not seem to favor traveling fans in St. Louis, nor does it really give us, outside of Kansas, a real good local regional rival like this. Like we're basically being made to play Go Fish a lot, with our games this year, and it is kind of what it is at this point. Honestly, I guess I just should just expect this at this point, from the MLS schedule makers, and also the fact that the Kansas games are in the middle of the week, but other than that, I mean, as Jeremy, you mentioned the 6 Wednesday games. I think with the way the schedule's being kind of smushed a little bit because of the World Cup this year, I think you just had to expect more midweek games. And honestly, guys, I'm kind of surprised there's not more midweek games in his schedule, honestly.
Well, and Tom, there's one other thing that jumps out at me too that I failed to mention until it just crossed my head a moment ago. It's, we talked a lot about teams, or a little bit about teams needing, like, taking long breaks from playing at home with the schedule change coming in 2027. There's a few times during the season where we're like, 2 or 3, 4 weeks without playing a home game. So maybe we'll start to see more of that, and we see that as we come, more building in towards that shift that's coming in the 2027 season, where we go long stretches without a home game, and that's maybe why some of this is designed that way too.
Definitely. So I think we need to have a deeper discussion on this in our extra time segment, which is going to be coming up here in just a little bit on YouTube. We're also going to talk about St. Louis City Academy next episode. That'll be on Tuesday, December 16th, so 2 weeks from now. We'll also have our holiday positional wish list. We hopefully Santa checks our lists and checks them twice, and hopefully we've not been too naughty, and our Corey Ray shopping ends up being very nice. But again, you can download this show on all podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, what have you. We're on there. And again, this is also available on YouTube, including the extra time segment, which will be starting up here in just a little bit. But I'm seeing right now, just watching the live stream right now, 139 people watching. A lot of you guys on X, a lot of you on YouTube, a lot of you, whether it's the Soccer Zombie YouTube or the STL Soccer News YouTube. Thank you so much, guys, for your support, and thank you for watching. I see you all in the chat. We're going to talk to you guys here on YouTube in just a little bit. However, if you don't want to stick around, if you want to hear some talk about the St. Louis Billikens men's soccer team and the great run they're doing in the NCAAs, you can flip it over to Ball Watching. Our friends at Ball Watching are having an episode literally as we are talking here about St. Louis University. So if you want to flip over to them and check them out, by all means. Of course, you can also catch them wherever you can get podcasts as well. So this is your Soccer Zombie, Tom Franklin.
I'm your friend in soccer, Jeremy Clements.
And I am acquaintance on the road, Jake Henry.
Alrighty, and this has been Red Smoke Rising. We will catch you all again in a couple of weeks, or on YouTube. We'll catch you again here in a few seconds. Adios. And welcome to Extra Time, everyone. So, catching up here on chat just a little bit. Aaron, we're talking about my gripe with the MLS schedule. We don't deserve anything. We would like it just like every other single team in MLS. I've heard complaints from other teams as well that the schedule isn't optimal for them either. I think when you're talking about 30 teams, guys, you're not going to make it a perfect schedule. I mean, that's just fair to say. But I will say, that we one of the things that we wanted to talk about on the podcast portion, which we can talk about now, is how strong this schedule is, and in particular how strong our non-conference opponents are. And Jeremy, you whipped this little graphic up for us here, and why don't you tell us exactly about who we're facing this year?
Yep. So the Eastern Conference opponents are, as on screen, the New England Revolution, NYCFC, DC United, Toronto FC, and then New York Red Bull closes out the slate. of our Eastern Conference opponents this year. Just some quick data, and again, credit goes to Chris Gebhardt, St. Louis Soccer News, helped put this together with us, getting us some data on this. But the points total of our opponents was 252. Again, this is limited to just to look at the Eastern Conference teams that we're playing in 2026. All time, we've only played a couple of these teams, and we played them a couple of times. We're 2-2-0, so we've never lost against any of these teams. Based on the points total, it's the 22nd toughest, so it's not a real tough schedule against the Eastern Conference. Includes just one playoff team, the recently eliminated NYCFC, and then, of course, the Wooden Spoon winners in DC United. But, yeah, so, Jake, thoughts, anything you take away from this non-conference schedule?
Yeah, as a Bayern fan, I'm really excited to see Chuapo Motin, so that'll be fun.
Totally. And Ray Kersing pointing out in the chat, divisions will allow for great road trip opportunities. We've traveled with the team, keep CSC in the Midwest. The rest will sort itself out. That I agree with you on that. By the way, Jake, I know you got to get running here, but we asked a question at the beginning. The one Thanksgiving food that you absolutely must have and would take on a desert island with you. Go.
Rice, cheddar, and broccoli. I touched on it in the intro, and I'm capping it off of that.
All right. I like it.
I will see you guys 12/16.
Sounds good, Jake. Have a good night, man. I know you got to be up bright and early to unload some trucks, so.
Yep. See ya.
See ya,
Jake. But yeah, Tom, what do you take away from this non-conference schedule as we continue here in extra time?
Well, without even looking at your bullet point there about strength of schedule being 22nd, I can just look at this and just see it is, what's the old phrase that Enzo Amore would say in WWE? SAWFT. Soft. Yes. Real ones know.
Certified G.
But and of course, we're talking about fairness and how this is compared to the rest of the league as well too. And it looked to me like it was a soft schedule. And just looking at the other teams around the league, it does look like a pretty soft schedule. So in fact, you actually got the standings there, and we're pretty far down there.
Yeah, 22nd, as I said. You have to look at the top five. The toughest going to San Diego and then Cincinnati, Real Salt Lake, Austin, and Orlando rounding out the most difficult. Again, this is based on points totals, and Tom, I'll say this for what it's worth. With how many changes some of these clubs may see, this may ultimately be I don't want to say nothing burger of a conversation, but for the sake of where we are now, it's fun to look at and fun to say, hey, maybe we have kind of that soft schedule against non-conference teams, and we'll be able to use that to our advantage and build some positive momentum throughout the season against our Eastern Conference opponents.
Well, I mean, how many teams this year were licking their chops at having San Diego FC on the roster this year? I remember people were really ragging on how easy San Diego was going to be this year just because of how they assembled their roster. I remember seeing comments of well, wow, that's a really good USL roster that San Diego has assembled. And, turns out Andreas Dreyer is a different kind of gravy. And not just that too. I mean, but to your point, Jeremy, I made the point earlier about how, with St. Louis City, how rosters are built and, how teams can, go from wooden spoon to, the top of the mountain like FC Cincy. Aaron, you're kind of echoing what I'm saying. Until we get better, other teams are probably looking at us as the winnable match on their schedule as well too. But that's kind of the thing with MLS, Jeremy. You never really know.
You don't, but I think the problem, Tom, to kind of go full circle all the way back to the beginning of our show where we were talking about the roster, you've got to raise the floor. So how much does bringing back a Josh Yarrow really raise the floor of this roster? No, he's not a guy you expect to get a substantial amount of minutes, but even still, the fall off from first team to subs to, God forbid, another injury crisis hits this club, you've got to be able to say your floor is higher than Josh Yarrow. And that is not, and this isn't to just bash on Yarrow. This is just the point of turning around this club and getting us from where we were. We were, I think, had 26 points dropped from leading positions this season. and all of that to say we still only missed the playoffs by 9 points. So we aren't that far off, but at the same time, you've got to raise that floor to get that turnaround that you were just talking about.
Exactly, because I mean, look at the teams that are still alive, in MLS Cup: Inter Miami and Vancouver. I mean, and you can kind of sort of throw Inter Miami out just because of how top heavy their roster is with Messi and Suarez and Alba and Busquets. I mean, not everyone can just roll those four out, like they can. But like a team like Vancouver, for instance, has incredible depth. And if you're talking about, and I think going into this season, Josh Yarrow was not expected to be leaned on as much as he was. Now, a reason that he was partly because of formation, because of the three in the back, but also because of those early season injuries that we had. Like, we were expecting a healthy Joachim Nilsson this year, and look how that how well that turned out. I hope he plays again, by the way, somewhere. Felix is asking the question, who leaves first, Yarrow or Hebert? These might be the last of the original City 222 guys. Well, also, you got to throw Celio in there as well. Celio was an original. Technically, you could even say Juan Kuzain, because Juan Kuzain is still in City 2, and he was an OG City 2 guy. I don't know if he's going to come back or not. City 2 hasn't announced their roster decisions yet. That is kind of an interesting question, Jeremy, because it is very obvious that Josh Yarrow has someone high up that is very loyal to him. And to be fair, Yarrow is he loves St. Louis from everything that I have heard. I think his significant others from St. Louis, and you can't deny his impact off the field, but he's someone that, like, honestly, I could see him retiring here, honestly, in some way, shape, or form. Now, whether it's hopefully by the time he's ready to retire, it's not on the active roster. Maybe he's on City 2, helping the kiddos out, or maybe he does take a community, relations, job in the front office. I don't know, but it just, at this point, Jeremy, it just feels like he's I mean, you ever see the movie, what was that movie with Owen Wilson, where he's like the lovable brother-in-law that is like, he's living with like Kate Hudson. It came out like a decade ago. I can't think. It was like My Idiot Brother.
Might be something. I'm not a huge movie guy, so I'm not any help on that.
That if you guys know what I'm talking about in the comments, help me out here. But in this movie, Owen Wilson was a likable guy, a really likable, lovable guy that just he was a bit of a screw up. He screwed up now and then. Yumi and Dupree. That's it. Thank you, Face to Face 27. Yumi and Dupree. Basically, I'm saying Josh Yarrow's Dupree in this situation, where he's a lovable guy. You want to help him out, but he just can't get out of his own way a little bit. So I just find it very hard to imagine St. Louis without Yarrow at this point.
And I agree, and I think I would say this. I would say that I do expect us to sign a center back. I think we have to sign a center back at some point in this offseason. I'm praying it's Henry Kessler and that he can stay healthy. Because to me, I don't know, if like last year when we signed Baumgartel, the only reason that I thought we signed Baumgartel, he was our 7th center back at that point, my thought was, okay, we only need 7 if we're shifting to 3 in the back. So to me, and Yarrow played fine for the most part in a 3 in the back when he had extra coverage. He wasn't great. Yes, he was statistically one of the worst defenders in MLS.
He even had some moments of brilliance. Like there was one game when I was doing my player rankings where he was man of the match. Like every now and then he would be brilliant.
Yeah. But again, I don't think he's a guy that I want to rely on. Maybe he's a late game sub. Maybe he's your cup guy, depending on what competition you're in, which, by the way, kind of going back to the schedule for just a quick mention, we don't know how those games are going to be fit in just yet. They haven't clarified that part of the schedule yet, but we'll get more there as we get closer to 2027, I'm sure. But no, I think we have to sign a center back. I think Yarrow, he's the locker room guy. We saw it if you watched the Between the Lines series that City did on YouTube, he was clearly one of the vocal leaders in the locker room. He was, you can see him in almost all of the community engagement things, including the most recent Make-A-Wish. he was the city player there. He's frequently in the visiting the hospitals kind of role for the players. So he adds value, I think, in that way, as well as what he does in the locker room. And who knows, maybe, you know, because he's from Ghana, I think, if I
Yes,
remember correctly.
he's originally
And
from Ghana.
so you think we just brought in a guy in Falou Fall from Senegal, if I remember correctly, where he is from.
Correct.
So maybe they have a connection, and maybe he can help with Falou Fall settling if Falou's still breaking into the league, right? Because he's only been here 6 months, so maybe there's some additional role for Josh to play off the pitch.
That's an excellent point there with, talking about helping Falou Fall's development. I mean, that honestly, that is something I didn't even think of. But yeah, Falou Fall, I mean, you're talking about someone that is coming to America for the first time. He's 21 years old. He's still refining his game a little bit. And, when you're a young player like that in a new land, you want familiar faces around you. And, having, a Senegalese player, with a Ghana player, I mean, that's all the same coast. So they're very culturally connected in that region. So that's a good point. I think Josh Arrow is someone that could probably be a good mentor for Falou Fall, and in Falou Fall is definitely someone that we want to see, progress and grow, because he's kind of, he's probably at this point. I don't know who would you say is our hottest prospect at this point. Would you think it'd be Falou Fall at this point, or would it be Mackay?
I think it's probably more of a toss-up, but I think a lot of people are going to say it's Mackay because he's had the national team call-ups like 4, 5, 6 camps in a row. He's been progressing through the ranks and age levels too. So it's probably Mackay, but I think that's just also a familiarity thing because, again, we've seen really City fans most seeing 6 months of Falou probably didn't follow him at Fredrikstad, who, by the way, just sold his partner along the back line to Nashville. So interesting to see the MLS rating Fredrikstad now.
Oh yes, Fredrikstad, the Fredrikstad to MLS. Actually, not just MLS, but Central MLS pipeline. I mean, everyone knows that Norway and Tennessee is just a natural pathway.
Yeah.
But it was very interesting to see. Like, I noticed a lot of comments about comparing him to Falou Fall, and like two different defenders, but both very modern. So we know Fall can work well with different defenders that play a different style, which is encouraging to see. But yeah, I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat right now from Matt. Fall will be a difference maker this year. I think he is going to take a big step forward this year. I think, especially if Henry Kessler doesn't come back, which I don't know. His social media posts have me thinking he might be coming back. I just personally, if I'm Henry Kessler, so Kessler is what, 27, 26, 27. So he's someone that I would not blame if he was kicking around Europe and trying to figure out if there's anyone interested in Europe, because agents are doing a lot of work in the background before the transfer window starts. It's not like in other sports where teams can't really negotiate until the window opens. I mean, negotiations are happening like 365 days a year in soccer, pretty much. So if I'm Henry's agent, I've already done the work on, is anyone going to be interested in Kessler? Is anyone going to be interested? Could he go to Scotland? Could he go to Germany? Could he go to Italy? Could he go? I mean, anywhere. And if I'm one of those teams, I look at Henry just from the outside looking in. Henry Kessler, he's a lot of things. He's a very talented defender. He is someone that I think we saw this year can play an anchor role in a 3 in the back, because he was basically Olaf's anchor, for the first couple months of the year, just out of necessity because Nilsson was hurt, and he performed brilliantly. He was probably our best player in the first month or two. But you look at his injury history, just keeps getting injured. And are you willing to take a risk on an American that you probably have to get a work permit for, that is, not going to be on the field for at least a third of the year? That's kind of the rub with him. So maybe, and as JT points out, Kessler does like St. Louis a lot. You don't have to, I mean, you can look at his social media and that confirms how much he likes St. Louis. Jerry Hayes has talked to Henry Kessler personally, and she can tell you how much he likes St. Louis. and she's not the only person that knows Kessler that has told me that he really likes St. Louis. Like, he does not want to necessarily leave St. Louis unless it's for a better opportunity elsewhere. That's the theory. Guy in his mid-20s. Of course, you're going to want to try to look at Europe at this point of his career. Why not? I just don't think the opportunities are there.
Yeah, and that's been kind of the read on what I've heard too, is that he wants to kick the tires on Europe before. What I've heard from one source is that that's exactly what he wants to do, but that St. Louis is his preferred destination. And I think, again, going back to reading into too much of his social media stuff, he's from the Northeast. Would he really be hanging around St. Louis in the offseason if he didn't like it here? Would he be going? Because if you follow him on Instagram, he's always exploring St. Louis. He was at Halloween parties. He's, I think he was doing something when it was snowing. He was at the training ground. But still, to me, you see all these other guys. Hartle's been back in Europe. Klaus and Celio back to Brazil and back to other countries. Even Felu Fall was going back home. Mm-hmm. So Kessler's still here. So I think you have a point well made, Tom.
Well, in fairness to Klaus, he does have some personal matters that he is attending to, which is why he wasn't part of training, was because he was attending to those. Aaron pointing out in the chat, also guessing that an attacker / winger has a higher money value upside than a center back, probably, but but that kind of leads into something else as well. When you're talking about, can Kessler get that opportunity overseas? He had an option here in St. Louis that was declined, and it would have been a pretty pricey option. So Kessler's probably been, and his agent have probably been working for the past month and a half to just determine what is his value right now. And right now, I mean, if you're St. Louis, you're hoping to bring back Kessler. Mm-hmm. But you're not willing to pay him like max TAM money or anything like that. You're probably looking. You're probably looking at something in the six figures for him at this point, and maybe the higher six figures, but still six figures. And so, I think Henry really, if he wants to, I think his next step is to this current step right now in St. Louis.
I think you're right. And just kind of looking at it, I think Matt threw out in the chat that he played in 15 games, but he also, or did he say that he missed 15? I forget. No, he started 15 here, but Henry also missed 15 games. So Transfermarkt lists Henry Kessler with having 4 injuries this season with City, missing a total of 15 games over the course of, 60, 87, 98 days. So he missed 98 days during the 24-25 season. But I mean, prior to that, the last big injury he had, just to be fair to him, he'd gone a period of really being uninjured. He did miss 180 days or 30 games with New England Revolution during the 23-24 season with a calf injury. But after that, he was healthy and had only missed 2 games with a calf or a muscle injury was the outage. I'm sorry. Long outage for a muscle injury, unspecified, but then had only had a 2-game outage for a calf injury, rather. So he's gone. It's kind of like he goes spells of staying healthy, but then he's got those spells of really being banged up. And to your point, that doesn't seem like something to me that if I'm a European side and I'm going to say championship level, because that's probably in my mind where he is, if that, or League One below that, would they take a flyer on a 27-year-old American who has some history of being injured?
That's an interesting question. I think we know the answer to it. I just don't see Europe for him, unless, and the only way he. Actually, I take it back. The one, if he's so hell-bent on Europe, I fear he'll end up like a Joe Aquini, where Joe Aquini right now is toiling on the bench at Asteris Tripolis in Greece. He comes in. I follow him on FOTMob, and every weekend I'll see Joe Aquini pop up. Joe Aquini subs on 83rd minute, 84th minute, 85th minute. I think he does have a goal or two for them, but like he is clearly not the guy in Greece. He was not the guy in Italy, which I'll admit I was upset with how he wasn't getting playing time in Como, but maybe Como knew something. Maybe they realized they kind of bought a lemon, right away, and that's why. I mean, and now we're seeing he's not getting time in Greece either. I fear if Kessler was going to force a move to Europe, he would end up in like he might be Sam Adinerin's teammate in Austria, or he'll end up being in the Greece where he's just kind of becoming a forgotten guy on the bench. Whereas here in St. Louis, we love Henry. I mean, and we love Henry as much as he loves St. Louis, and so it kind of goes back to why Roman Berkey's here. Because again, Roman Berkey, world acclaimed goalie, Champions League goalie, Borussia Dortmund starter for many years, get to play in front of the big yellow wall, goes to St. Louis and resigns in St. Louis. Why? Because he likes it here. And remember, these players are human too. And that's and which again you can also use as to explain why Josh Yaro's here. Because he likes St. Louis and the team likes him. At least, so and I've heard that, like he's very well liked in the locker room, so again, we have to remember, we can talk about XG and we can talk about the game on the field, but and that's not to discredit that either. Definitely not. I mean, it's look, we like sports because we like watching wins and losses, but when we're trying to figure out why players do what they do, remember they're human.
Right. So, Tom, let me ask you this about Kess. So you mentioned his max TAM. He's coming off a year where his guaranteed compensation was $1.3 million. If you're Corey Ray, I'm going to put you in the hot seat. Where are you valuing Kessler compensation wise? Does he have to take less than the 1.3? Do you re-sign him at 1.3? Where do you feel that is, or do you even have a way to answer that?
I don't give him 1.3. I definitely do not give him 1.3. What did Nilsson make?
Nilsson was close to that. Give me a second and I'll tell you.
I want to say he was like 1.1 mil?
1.255.
He was 1.255. I don't think Kessler's even worth. I like at this point he's not worth that. And I want to throw it back, Matt in the comments. I see a multi-year deal, less money than the mill, but the security of a 2-year. I can see if Kessler really loves St. Louis and wants to stay here, I could see him doing like a 2-year deal where he gets like $800K per. Or I could see him coming back on a 1-year deal for maybe it's $1 million. Or maybe it's like $950K with a mutual option for 2027. Maybe he wants to bet on himself a little bit by taking a 1-year deal with an option that he has say over. Or if he likes St. Louis, if he takes a multi-year deal, I think that'll answer the question just where he sees himself.
Yeah, and I think your number there was pretty good because I was just looking Timo Baumgartel, just for comparison, who, in the absence of a Kessler or another signing, probably steps into that starting role. He's on about $643,000 a year. So I figure Kess is a step up from Baumgartel. No disrespect. It's just where I honestly evaluate the players based on my eye test and my stats test. So $800K to $1 million seems fair value in my mind. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to point out, you have Steven's comment pulled up here. And we're talking about the human element here. Just because people like it here doesn't mean other players will want to sign here over other cities when trying to attract international talent. And I think he makes a good point in that I think if you're an international player, you don't necessarily look at St. Louis as a destination per se. I think one reason why, I know some people, and I think I was probably among them too, were kind of like, okay, Lutz is signing the 2019 German under-21 team, but these are all players that were familiar with each other. So familiarity, like we were talking about, pairing up Yaro with Fall, I think there is validity into like, okay, maybe I never envisioned myself in St. Louis, but my friends are playing there. But if you're just a random, international player that doesn't know anyone in St. Louis, you're not going to initially think of that. But if you've followed the St. Louis Blues or St. Louis Cardinals for any length of time, there are so many stories of players that end up getting traded to St. Louis and they fall in love with the city. and they still live here to this day. I'm like guys like Perry Turnbull, for instance, from the Blues, was a first round draft pick back in the day, had no concept of St. Louis. Now he lives here full time, even in his post retirement years. Wayne Gretzky still has a house in Frontenac. His wife's from here, but like he often talks about how much he likes St. Louis because he can go out in public and not get mobbed. It feels like a regular city to them. So that is an important thing to factor. I also see you, Chris Gebhardt, in the chat. We've held it off long enough. All's well and good, but let's discuss why mashed potatoes are the king of Thanksgiving and everything else pales in comparison. So we heard from Jake earlier. His choice for his number one desert island Thanksgiving food is broccoli, cheese, and rice, which actually sounds pretty good. And I'm not even a big broccoli fan, but that sounds like a good combination. I'm going to have to concur with Chris Gebhardt on this, in that mashed potatoes are the king of Thanksgiving food, even more so than turkey. Mashed potatoes are versatile. You can make them in so many different ways. You can make them a little lumpy. You can make them smooth. You can dress them up however much you want. You can put butter on them. You can put gravy on them. You can put salt. You can put pepper on them. It's like the one food as well, besides cranberries in a can, which, I mean, who really eats Thanksgiving dinner for cranberries in a can, that you really cannot mess up. It is a staple. It is a go-to, and for me, it's mashed potatoes. Aaron Leak in the chat, I should say. Mashed potatoes are great, but you can have great mashed potatoes anytime you want. I rarely get pumpkin pie outside of the holidays, so that is what I can't do without. Good point. Jeremy, when was the last time you ate pumpkin pie away from the holidays?
Well, maybe a controversial take. I'm not a pumpkin pie fan, so I don't eat pumpkin pie.
But for a new co-host on Red
but I am a big apple pie guy, and
okay.
so this year was apple pie. That was my go-to, and I don't eat apple pie a lot outside of the holiday season, to be honest. So I've got my apple pie, but that wasn't my go-to dish this year. And I have to first of all apologize because I may offend my own family here. But if I've got a new favorite thing this year, and it came from my girlfriend's mom. Her and her husband made mashed sweet potatoes. And they were so. I have not stopped talking about them since. I've asked them for the recipe probably 3 or 4 times already. That is like the new staple for me, is a mashed sweet potato that had brown sugar, it had cinnamon, butter. And they were just I would eat those every day.
I feel that sweet potatoes, just in general, are the Provel of the potato group.
Oh, ouch!
Because you either love sweet potatoes and you just go, you would run through a wall for sweet potatoes, or you just absolutely despise them. And Kayla, I see you loving the sweet potato casserole. Here's my take on sweet potatoes. I think there's high variability with sweet potatoes in whether they're good or not. You can make, as Kayla said, you can make a dang good sweet potato casserole. Like my stepbrother's fiance made really good sweet potato casserole this year. Is it something that I would ever ask for? No. I am very take it or leave it in general with sweet potatoes. I will never have sweet potato fries in my life. That just does not sound like anything I would ever want to eat. But
you're missing out.
But a banger sweet potato casserole with marshmallows on top, I'm about that.
Man, we've got to so here's the thing. If we're going to start doing food segments, we've got to get the guys from South End Supporters, the South End Slobs segment they do. We've got to get them in here for that. But so, okay, Tom, this is the big question. If we're having this conversation, how much does the exclusivity of the food needing to be around the holidays play into this conversation? Because you just said it. I could have sweet potatoes anytime I want. I mean, they're not exclusive to the holiday.
It's one reason why I don't rank turkey especially high. I mean, I love turkey, but I can have a turkey sandwich right now. I have turkey in the fridge. You can get it at the deli. You can get it at the deli counter. There's nothing special about turkey. There is nothing special about ham because you can have ham. You can have ham at Christmas, and then you can have ham sandwiches any time of the year. You can have and you can have ham when you eat bacon because that's literally ham. I think exclusivity means a lot. And like pumpkin pie. I don't eat pumpkin pie outside of Thanksgiving either.
Okay.
I think I have it now and then for Christmas, but really for me, it's a Thanksgiving food.
All right.
That's why like you mentioned you really dig apple pie. I like apple pie. And as I've gotten older, I've taste buds change, and I've liked it even more as I've gotten older. But I've never gone out to like McDonald's per se and had like one of their apple pies, or
Oh,
it's nothing I never would seek out but it is something that like I can go to McDonald's, get myself a
so
hot apple pie right now.
okay. So then, if we're gonna say, just for sake of conversation, I need to go back and amend my answer because of the exclusivity on the holidays, whether it's Christmas, Thanksgiving, or whatever. Then it'd be my grandma's stuffing. It was my departed grandmother made this really really good stuffing. And I guess that's so okay. Does it have to be stuffed in the bird to be stuffing, or can you
No,
cook it in a pan and call it dressing?
uh,
Like that's
pan and
another.
dressing is fine. Pan and dressing is
But
perfectly fine.
but that's what it was. But that would be what it is because it's truly limited to only the holidays, your Christmases, your Thanksgivings, occasionally maybe an Easter. But that would be the holiday food for me then.
That's fair. That's fair. I see a shout for pecan pie or is it pecan pie? Oh, that's a whole nother argument.
Peas
Jeez.
in a can pie.
Peas in a can pie. Nice. Very
I
nice.
watch too much SpongeBob apparently.
Gebhardt noting that we are all adults and we can have any of these foods at any time we want. That's true.
Ooh,
Okay, see, we're not talking about whether we can have them; it's whether we would want them at
true,
any other time.
true.
So that's where
Um,
I stand. I will say a close like you were talking about like unique Thanksgiving foods.
mhm.
There is mashed potatoes almost got knocked off the perch this year. I will say that. Shout out to my stepbrother Brett and his fiance who makes an excellent cornbread casserole.
Mm.
What is a cornbread casserole, you ask? Well, it is a casserole made of cornbread with corn in it. So it's corn inside of cornbread. And it doesn't sound great. I will admit. It like just the way I described it to you, it probably just was like, "Oh, okay, fine." I'm telling you guys, there's something magical when you cook those flavors together. Cornbread casserole, it's almost desert island food for me.
Okay.
That's fair. And of course, we have Aaron in the chat. Yes, he said Dino chicken nuggets and ice cream sandwich at dinner. Doesn't mean it's normal. There was one year when my dad had just gotten divorced, and we didn't really have anywhere to go for Thanksgiving, so Dad went and got those small Cornish hens,
Mm.
from the grocery store, and we each had a Cornish hen, for Thanksgiving, and that was really it. So I feel that. I feel that. Um, Kayla, I love this.
Making me hungry.
Second half of your life begins when you realize that you can just make a cake whenever you want, and it doesn't have to be
So,
someone's birthday.
so that's one of the things now that I've been hooked on Andes since I've been on this side of the river enough is they have this right now they have this apple pie concrete. Oh,
Ooh.
it's sinful and I need to stay away because I'm trying to lose weight, not add.
Well, good luck losing weight this time of year.
I know, right?
Trust me on that. It's
So
cold. We're shut in, and we are in the holiday trilogy for good food with Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. So
100%.
we just
Um,
this is why we make New Year's resolutions because of all the sinning we do for the last for the last 3 months of the year. But
yeah.
I think we should probably wrap this up.
Yeah.
I think we
I
should
need
wrap
to get
this
a
up.
snack.
Well, yeah, I'm hungry too now. Thank you,
uh,
Jerry. Thank you to everyone in the chat as well. There's still 140 of you here. My goodness, people. Thank you so much for that. And like I said, we'll be back December 16th, and then during the season, we'll be weekly. It's just the off season. There's just not a whole lot going
and
on.
No, and Tom, maybe by the time we're back, I know we've got Jake's Academy update coming up when we're back. He'll have some information on the Academy
Yeah, we
results.
just ran a little long for that, so sorry about that, Jake.
No, and to your point, maybe we'll have a head coaching an announcement too. That would be. I think I was talking to Matt from the chat a little bit and Matt Baker a little bit as well, talking about maybe early December gives us up until the 14th. Free agency starts on the 10th, so we might have movement. We've already seen some movement. Seattle Sounders sending a player to Necaxa in Liga MX today, one of their midfielders, I think.
And I saw CF Montreal a couple days ago brought in Vera from Real Salt Lake. So moves are happening. And then the Super Draft. What day is the Super Draft?
That's a great question. Off the top of my head, I don't remember. I know free agency's committed to memory. Give me a second and I'll tell you.
Just trying to think if it's going to be in time for our next episode or not.
The MLS Super Draft is, let me see if it'll tell me, has not, I don't know off the top of my head. I thought I had it. Did I have that I think I had it on one of our previous rundowns, but the Super Draft, let's see. Either way, I mean, it's coming up here shortly. I do know that much.
December 18th. So it'll be just 2 days after our next episode. So yeah, we won't have that for you next episode. We'll probably have that for you in January. But for the next episode, we're gonna have hopefully a head coach, a holiday wish list episode for you, and some hot prospects with St. Louis City Academy. Oh my. But anyway, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you so much. Please drop a like if you enjoyed what you saw tonight on YouTube. Remember, this is just going to be on STL Soccer News YouTube and on X, after a little while. So just make sure you're following those accounts. And thank you so much for being my co-pilot, Jeremy.
Hey, thanks for having me. I always love talking soccer with my friends.
Absolutely. And you guys in the chat are our friends as well. So have a good night, everyone. And let's go City. And remember, always